Okay, so we're here for the first pillar of the warm-up, which is going to be warming up the core. So before we get to some of these movements, I want you to think about the core as basically your torso, right? So if I were to chop off my arms, chop off my legs, and all that's left is just my torso, that's really your core. That's what we're thinking about, right? It's not just the front here. We typically think about core as like a six-pack, which, I mean, certainly looks good, right? But we want our core to be functional. We don't just want it to look good, right? Ideally, we have both. But more importantly, we want it to be functional. We need our core to work well. The purpose of the core is not really to initiate movement. The purpose of the core is to stabilize and resist movement. An example of this is something like a sit-up would be initiating movement, right? You're flexing forward. An example of resisting movement is like a heavy carry and just activities of daily life, right? You pick something up off the ground, you're taking a step, you're walking, a buddy comes up behind you and pushes you, right? If your core is not able to stabilize and resist that movement, if we're just walking around like a wet noodle all day, obviously that's not a functional core. And what can happen is if the core is not able to stabilize and resist that motion, then you're going to get hurt, right? You get pain in your lower back, pain in your hip. So what we're going to work on in this first part of the warm-up here with the core is working on those exercises and those movements that are going to help stabilize the core. So we're going to stay away from sit-ups for now. They have their place. But in the warm-up, we're going to stabilize the core. So first example of this is something as simple as a plank. So you can plank here on your palms or on your forearms, doesn't matter. But with a plank, what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep your hips and your shoulders relatively level, trying to flex your belly, and you want to breathe through your belly, right? Just making sure that you're breathing as you go through a plank. Something like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 3 or 4 rounds would be certainly appropriate. Some other options you can do are shoulder taps. So you find the same plank position, but you're going to tap one shoulder after the other. So it looks something like this. Tap, tap. You can do anywhere from 5 to 10 of those, again, a 30-second rest and repeat. And the focus when you're doing taps or any type of instability with the core is to maintain your hips, maintain your shoulders, stay nice and level the whole time. The cue I like to use is that you're balancing a glass of water on your back, right? So you don't want to shift and wiggle, you want to stay as nice and rigid as possible. Third thing you can do is something called a bird dog, and this is one of my personal favorites. So a bird dog, you start in a crawl position. So a crawl position, straight line from your shoulder to your wrist and your hip to your knee, just roughly because it'll be hard to see on yourself. And then from here, you're going to reach with opposites. There's my right arm and my left leg. I'm going to hold this for a couple seconds. I'm going to tap underneath. I'm going to reach out again. So doing something like 5 of those on each side, 30-second rest and repeat, again, that's all going to be appropriate. The purpose here is not to light up your core, right? This is not meant to be a workout, it's meant to be a warm-up. So you want to get yourself loose, but you do want to feel your core fire. And we want to work on stabilizing the core to prepare ourselves to move later.